On the night of July 13th to 14th, 2026, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces struck Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat, one of Russia's largest oil refining and petrochemical complexes, deep inside Bashkortostan. The question that strike answers is this: can Ukraine systematically destroy Russia's ability to fuel its own war machine, one refinery at a time? Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat was the last major gasoline producer in Russia that had not yet been hit by Ukrainian strikes in 2026. Every other major Russian refinery had already burned. This one was the holdout, and now it's gone too. Ukraine's Special Operations Forces drones traveled around 1,500 kilometers to reach the facility. That's not a battlefield strike. That's a drone flight from one country's capital to another and back. It's a message, and the message is brutal. Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat is one of Russia's largest oil refining and petrochemical complexes, combining an oil refinery, a gas chemical plant, and a production unit. The facility produces more than 150 types of products, including gasoline, diesel fuel, fuel oil, bitumen, polyethylene, ammonia, and urea. Its design processing capacity sits at approximately 10 million tons of crude oil per year. That's not a backwater installation. That's a core artery of Russia's industrial fuel system. A fire was reported at the facility, and the AVT-6 primary crude oil distillation unit, along with other production facilities at the plant, was damaged, Ukraine's Special Operations Forces confirmed. The AVT-6 is the heart of the complex. It's where raw crude becomes usable fuel. Without it, the rest of the refinery is a warehouse. So how did Ukraine reach a target this deep inside Russian territory? The answer reveals a capability shift that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. The FP-1 is a Ukrainian long-range, one-way attack drone developed and produced by the defense technology company Firepoint. Introduced in late 2024, the FP-1 is designed for deep strike missions, capable of delivering a warhead over distances up to 1,600 kilometers. Analysts attribute Ukraine's ability to disrupt rear-area logistics to the FP-1's cost-effectiveness, estimated at $55,000 per unit versus $200,000 for comparable systems. Russia's air defenses cost more to operate than Ukraine's drones cost to build. That's the economics of this war in one sentence. Ukrainian defense company Firepoint produces about 200 long-range strike drones per day. The drones belong to the FP-1 and FP-2 families, designed for deep strikes on Russian territory. That's a production rate that makes these attacks not just possible, but repeatable, night after night, week after week. The mission on the night of July 13th was carried out in cooperation with the resistance movement Chornaya Iskra, also known as Black Spark, which operates inside Russian territory. That detail matters. Ukraine isn't just launching drones blindly into the dark. It's running coordinated operations with human intelligence assets on the ground inside Russia itself. Their involvement highlights the growing challenge facing the Kremlin, as sabotage networks and drone operations threaten strategic sites far from the battlefield. Bashkortostan's regional head confirmed a drone raid on the Salavat industrial zone, saying the attack had been repelled and that several fires were caused by debris from intercepted drones. However, he did not explicitly confirm that the refinery itself had been struck. Russia's denial is the tell. When officials confirm fires but refuse to confirm refinery damage, the refinery got hit. Now here's where the picture shifts, because what happened to Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat on July 14th didn't happen in isolation. It's the final data point in a campaign that has been methodically dismantling Russia's fuel sector for months. As of early July, Ukrainian strikes had disabled nearly 43% of Russia's designed oil refining capacity. Fuel production in June fell by 25% year over year, while current output is estimated to be about 20% below domestic demand. 20% below domestic demand. That's not a disruption. That's a structural fuel shortage running in the middle of a wartime economy. Since the beginning of 2026, drones have attacked Russian refineries at least 194 times, with 8 facilities targeted in the past month alone. Total losses for the refining sector since August 2025 are estimated at $13.5 billion. Russia has been forced to sell crude oil to India at discounted prices while simultaneously purchasing expensive refined petroleum products abroad to cover domestic shortages. The country, sitting on the world's largest proven oil reserves, is now importing fuel. Let that land. Ukraine's refinery attacks have mounted pressure on the Kremlin by aggravating a domestic fuel supply crisis that has already caused export bans, price hikes, and sales restrictions across Russia. The Russian government announced on July 8th that it would ban the export of diesel fuel until at least the end of the month, after weeks of Ukraine successfully targeting energy infrastructure. That diesel export ban is the Kremlin's quiet admission. They can't afford to let fuel leave the country because there isn't enough left to sell. Most Russian regions have introduced fuel rationing measures since early June as authorities try to ensure the domestic market remains supplied. Fuel rationing in Russia, a country whose economy is built on hydrocarbons. The July 14th strike didn't come alone either. Ukraine struck two major Russian oil refineries, a shiploading area, several vessels, and other military and logistics targets overnight. The Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat complex in Bashkortostan and the Afipsky oil refinery in Russia's Krasnodar Krai both came under Ukrainian attack. The Afipsky refinery has a designed annual processing capacity of around 6.25 million metric tons of oil and is involved in supplying fuel to the Russian military. Drones have hit Afipsky at least 8 times since May 2023, including a March 2026 strike that damaged its primary processing unit. Some refineries aren't just struck once, they're struck repeatedly until they stop working. And the week before Salavat? Ukraine's most recent strike on an oil refinery before July 14th came on July 9th, when Kyiv's forces struck the Ilsky oil refinery in Russia's Krasnodar Krai. Prior to that, on July 8th, the Saratov oil refinery was struck, leading to a halt in production. A key Russian oil refinery in the city of Saratov halted processing on July 8th, following a Ukrainian drone strike on the facility. Not slowed down, halted. That's a refinery that went dark. Ukrainian drones also struck a major Russian oil refinery in the city of Syzran in Samara Oblast overnight on July 12th. The Syzran refinery has a processing capacity of approximately 9 million tons of crude oil per year and supplies fuel to the Russian Air Force and military units in central and southern Russia. Russia's Air Force is drawing fuel from a refinery that Ukraine just struck. That's not coincidence. Ukraine is targeting the specific nodes that feed the military's operational tempo. Now, some counter-arguments deserve to be heard directly. Russia does still hold resilience cards. Gasoline shortages are being felt across much of Russia, including Moscow, while revenues from the sector are no longer sufficient to offset soaring military expenditures. But Russia has been importing refined products and redirecting crude exports to sustain volume. The system hasn't collapsed. It has degraded. Moscow also still controls significant pipeline infrastructure running to Belarus, and the refining sector, while battered, hasn't been wiped out entirely. Some facilities have been repaired and brought back online. Ukraine's drones can strike, but they can't permanently occupy a refinery. But the single reality that doesn't change is this. The Salavat complex was the last major gasoline producer that strikes had not yet touched in 2026. Its loss means roughly 11,000 tons of daily fuel deliveries gone from the Russian market, about 5% of domestic demand. And every hit compounds the previous one. Each shutdown refinery makes the next fuel shortage worse. The less revenue Russia earns from petroleum product exports, the fewer resources it has to finance weapons production and sustain its military. As one refinery calculates losses from a fire, another prepares for repairs, and a third comes under attack yet again, the Kremlin's room for maneuver, financially as well as militarily, continues to shrink. There's also a technological story running underneath all of this. According to Firepoint, the FP-1's range has been increased from 1,600 kilometers to 2,700 kilometers, allowing it to reach targets as far as western Siberia. The extended range was achieved through a redesigned wing incorporating an additional fuel tank. On July 6th, Ukrainian drones reported to be FP-1s traveled over 2,500 kilometers and hit Russia's Omsk refinery, the largest oil refinery in Russia. That was a record. A drone flying from western Ukraine to western Siberia and hitting its target. Russian air defense, the vaunted layered system that Moscow has spent decades building, watched it happen. Omsk was the last of Russia's top 11 refineries that had never before been attacked during the full-scale invasion. That distinction no longer exists. Russia no longer has a single major refinery that has remained untouched. What does it mean that Ukraine just closed out that list? It means the campaign has run its full first circle. Every major facility is now a known target, a confirmed vulnerability, a place Russian commanders have to worry about on top of everything else they're managing. The psychological weight of that is real. Ukraine is fighting a war it can't win on the ground alone by starving the machine from the inside out. The refinery in Bashkortostan that burned on July 14th wasn't just a target. It was the last unchecked box on a list, and now every box is checked. Two questions this story doesn't answer. First, at what point does Russia's domestic fuel shortage begin directly limiting the pace of its ground offensive in Ukraine? And has that threshold already been crossed? Second, if Ukraine's FP-1 drones can now reliably reach targets 2,500 kilometers away, which Russian strategic sites, beyond refineries, are now effectively within range? What do you think? Tell me in the comments. And if you want this kind of analysis as it happens, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.